Hey guys, just thought I'd do a quick video tutorial here as I've run across somebody who might have done this on Reddit, but I see it actually happen quite a lot. Sorry about the bird in the back. Basically, I've imported just the default monkey that Blender has here, and you can see it's nice and smooth. But if you actually bring this into Cura, for instance, or any slicer, you'll notice that it's nice and blocky. But we're not seeing that in the Blender display here. So what's going on? Well, this is a problem that I have with a lot of the tutorials you might find on the internet, like YouTube and Udemy courses and stuff like that. Whereas they're often focused in making Blender designs for rendering or animation. So they will typically have you do something that is not conducive to 3D printing here. So what's actually going on with this model is there's what's called smooth shading turned on. So in order to get rid of that, if you're in object mode here, you can see the top left object mode, you can actually right click on that and shade flat. Oh, sorry, click on that. Click on the model first and then shade flat. And then you will actually see the geometry that actually exists. If we want to shade smooth again, and then I can show you what's actually going on. So there's a couple of ways of doing this, but easiest way is probably go to edit mode and you can see that the actual wireframe shows up and the geometry that you see actually changes. So this is actually showing you the geometry as it is. There's other ways to view the wireframe, but this is the easiest for now. So when you see that this is the actual geometry, all these little dots are what are called nodes, and then the lines form faces, and the faces are what's giving you this gray area. So it's important to just not work in object mode for one thing, because that will potentially show you something different than what you should actually be seeing. So if you wanted to actually make the model smooth, what we would do is go into object mode again. On the right here, under the very first tab here, editor type, you can add modifier. And you can do a subdivision, if I can find it. I always have trouble finding this for some reason. I don't actually work in Blender that often, so it's subdivision surface. That's what it's called. So you can see that there's actually two different methods that it does. There's the cat mult, and then there's simple. Simple just does a subdivision of the existing surfaces. It doesn't modify any geometry at all. So what a lot of you who are doing more organic models will want is this Campbell Clark. There's two things here. There's a render and there's a levels viewport. And so the levels viewport's actually what we want. This will actually do the division of the surfaces. The render one actually is a separate one, and again, this will mess it up when you're rendering. So this will actually display differently than if you actually do the full subdivisions. So I always like to have that one, just so you see what you're actually doing, or even 0 is better. Levels viewport, so you can see every time we do this, it makes it smoother to an extent, and then it's just kind of pointless to go beyond. You see 6 as the top level here. So if we have 0, this is actually our original geometry. 1, you can see the change that immediately makes. It's massive, and it can be quite destructive if you're not looking for it. So if you have to do like if you have an existing design and you do this, you want to do this fairly early in the process, so then you can modify the geometry that appears after here. So let's do really nice smooth here, like 2 looks gorgeous to me. And in order to apply it, you have to click on this down one and apply. If you do not apply it, then again, when you export the model, it will not actually have this. So you do need to apply it. So you can continue to do all your work and stuff without ever applying it. And then when you export it, the geometry itself will actually still be different because it will not automatically apply the modifier. But if you apply the modifier, then you can actually see in edit mode that it's made a lot more geometry here. And if we were to actually export this, so let's export this as an STL, which is the standard for 3D printing. So I have my previous monkey there. So I'll just label this monkey 2, export. And then if this version of Curious sometimes doesn't shade things properly. There we go, when you import it. I do get model errors, but that's because the monkey's not built properly, but that's fine. But you'll see it still actually does have some of this texture going on here, which you can see exactly where those are because all of these are flat spots. So if you actually wanted a fully round one, you would divide more and more and more, which we could do. So let's add modifier again, subdivision surface. I don't know why it keeps defaulting to that. So let's boost it up to another 4 just to get it very smooth. And then we'll apply that. And then when we actually export this, it will be, so let's label this monkey 3 then. So let's get rid of this. As you can see, there's all these little lines here, flat spots. But if we go monkey 3, we'll get less of that. But as you can see, it takes longer to import because there's actually just a lot more geometry. And if you go too far, there we go. If you go too far, sometimes Cura will crash. But you can see it's nice and smooth now. We still have errors because that's the way the monkey is. But, yeah. So that's basically how you do an actual more organic shape. But the main takeaway of this is make sure that you're actually seeing what you want to see in Blender. Because if you go into edit mode, you can actually, let's just hit 8, select all. Yeah, this is really tight mesh. So that was actually probably too far, but if you want a nice smooth surface, then that's the way to go, I guess. Because essentially we did 8 subdivisions here because we did 2 the first time and then 4 afterwards. So we've done 8 subdivisions. So there's a lot of geometry here, and you can see if you really zoom in, you can see all that geometry. So I wouldn't normally recommend going that high, but just for demonstration purposes. So, yeah, if you were to print this out, then you still will not get a completely smooth surface. You can get a smoother surface with some higher end resin printers and stuff, but for an FDM printer, if you were to slice this, you'll notice, actually, I don't know if it'll slice properly with these errors it's having, but it will take a long time to slice because of this geometry, and that's why I don't recommend doing too much of a subdivision, especially on a large one. You can see, yeah, so if you preview it, you can see, ooh, yeah, it's got a bunch of errors going on here, but you will notice that it's still making these like flat spots here. And that's just because of how the printer is set up. You can see my stuff here. Quality, like my layer height's 0.2. That's because I have a 0.4 millimeter nozzle. So I have a 0.2 setting here. You will only get a better print from this point on by shrinking the size of your nozzle and also setting it up properly within here. So no matter what, you're going to end up with some flatness like this. And consequently, if you also have, I don't know if this model has any, especially because it's got an error there. But if you have a curve that's too small, it will simply just not print this curve properly. And changing your orientation of this, like when you're slicing it, might actually help that. That's why some people print at a 45 or even having this at a 90 just to have different smoothness in different areas, because it prints a little smoother on the sides than it does on the top for these. So as you can see, the top makes it really quite flat, whereas if you wanted this to actually be accented, you might flip this over and having it print out a 45 or something else. That's it for this quick tutorial. Not really so much tutorial, it's just a kind of what to look out for. I hope you got something out of it.